I want to remind the listeners, last month, I was shocked to watch a reportage. I believe it was done by TV5, where the Congolese government sent an envoy, a peace envoy, to the northeast Congo in the Ituri region. And the peace envoy included someone named Germain Katanga. Germain Katanga was found guilty at the International Criminal Court. He was sentenced to prison. His prison sentence was commuted to the Makala prison in Kinshasa. And me last month watching, I'm seeing a former rebel who had his sentence commuted to the Makala prison in the Congo with Congolese military uniform negotiating with a rebel group called Codeco. So I am not crazy to say that Paul Kagame, Joseph Kabila, or Museveni should go to the ICC, because I wouldn't want 5 years after that to see them running around in Mali. This is why I support the African courts. The model that was used to try Habré is a model that Congolese should look at. And they have actually supported that. And this example of what we should do and others is beyond what's needed, because the UN mapping exercise report is very clear on the process. They gave many examples of transitional justice that Congolese people can support. And the Congolese civil society in mass have already said, in all those examples that you have provided, we support the mixed chambers. Now, how then do we achieve that? What are the levers? All of us have shared many levels. For those in the United States, it's simple. I always go with Public Law 109456. Barack Obama, as a senator, wrote a law signed by George Bush. This law in section 105 says that the US Secretary has the power to withhold aid to any nation destabilizing the Congo. The evidence exists, but the United States military, the United States government, continue to fund the nations destabilizing the Congo against their own law. So for an American listening to this, what am I going to do? Well, when you contact your legislator, it's not a question of a moral right for justice. There is already a law that exists. So when you're contacting your Congress people and others, you're saying, I'm not coming to you because I'm appealing to your conscience. I'm saying that we actually have a law that we are breaking, that we continue to send Rwandan troops in Central African Republic, in Mali, in Sudan, in South Sudan. You have Ugandan soldiers in Iraq, in Afghanistan. I was speaking with comrades from Haiti. They're telling me that Rwandan troops are in Haiti. And I'm wondering, what are they doing in Haiti, right? How are all of this happening? So against, I don't know if people know, Rwandan generals have international arrest warrants from the Spanish coup, 40 of them. And these generals include James Kabarebe, who threatened Paul Kagame. I'm sorry, he did not threaten Paul Kagame. I wish one they will do. But James Kabarebe, who is a Rwandan military officer, who till today, I do not know which country he's from. In 1997, he became the Congolese Army Chief of Staff. Later, he became the Rwandan Minister of Defense. Right now, he's a military advisor to the Rwandan president. And you wonder, this is a rebel without switch side anytime. But James Kabarebe is on the arrest warrant, and many others, the Jack Ziza and others. But these guys continue to fly on flights, right? They fly away. They don't get arrested like Paul Rusesabagina was kidnapped in Dubai. And all these nations are bringing them. So knowing actually what is happening, putting pressure in your nations, providing the proper narrative is going to help Congolese already tactics on the ground that we can use on the US, as I mentioned. And on the African side, it is an embarrassment to the African Union that the African Union is not at the forefront of this issue. The African Union should say that if Congolese who are members of the African Union And the Article 2 of the Charte africaine says that Africans have the right to self-determination, and Congolese have that right. They've been fighting for self-determination, and they are right now calling for the International Tribunal for Congo. They have yet say a word around the UN mapping exercise report and the implementation of it. Africans on the continent shouldn't question that. What is this institution? Is it a club of dictators, as it's been labeled lately, or an institution where its founding members, Kwame Nkrumah and the Nasser, who believe a united Africa, believe that no African should live without dignity, that we must come together to transform the continent. We should put pressure on the African Union, because if Congo is able to get justice through the tribunal, there is opportunity for transformation in DRC. And if DRC is liberated and has a form of justice that the people feel that they can come to a closure, we can transform the entire continent because of its potential. And I come to the last point, when people are talking about the role of the mining corporations. And that's what we as Africans have to see. I've always shared with any African is what's happening in the Congo could happen in any other African country. You can study the Congo, study the tactics, and you start seeing, oh, what happened in Libya? You start going around different nations that have struggles, right? That is paramount for us to stop. While our African brothers are being given these guns and weapons to come and pilfer, destroy our land, our minerals are living in billions out of the continent, and you do not see these corporations listed. This is why I support the International Tribunal for Congo per the recommendation of the mapping exercise report, because they want not just the individuals to be held accountable, also the corporations that benefited during the conflict, that they should pay reparations to the Congolese for the coltan that they got to put on their cell phones, for the cobalt they are now using into the Tesla vehicles, and so on. And that's why we must have an international tribunal for DRC, and reparation is the word of the day.
Thank you so much, Kambale. I'm coming back to Nii, and please unmute. But again, I know you've been at this work for a long time, and you've watched some of this in the Q&A in the web chat. We cannot hear you very well, but what are your answers to some of those, to some of those questions? People are talking about, roles of government. I know you've been really pushing for people to challenge their government. But yes, please.
Can you hear me better now, I hope?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. And of course, I'm so proud of my fellow panelists. Here they say truth in advertising. I think people should know that on this panel. It's a friend that I admire very much. And I say that because I want to give even special commendation for where Kambale just finished. We won the tribunal. The millions of Africans who have did that. But in addition, he mentioned the reason it's being done, and the reason that other African countries need to pay attention and take lessons and be in solidarity with people in the Great Lakes, in the Congo. It is being done to control and to extract and to steal African wealth, the natural resources. And the reason that just grabbed me is this very month, the United Nations Trade and UNCTAD, the UN Trade Agency, has just come out with another one of a report on what is called illicit financial flows. I call it how Africa's resources get stolen. They've just put this name on it, illicit flows. About 5 years ago, the African Union had former President Thabo Mbeki do a study to see how much of our wealth is stolen. He came up with a number of about 60 billion a year. 2 years before that, the UN itself had done it through the UN Economic Commission for Africa. They also came up with about 50 billion a year. Tabumeki panel measured it at about 60. This month, UNCTAD has come out and said it is now at 90 billion a year. B with a billion, 90 billion United States dollars is being stolen from our continent through minerals extraction and under invoicing every year. That report just came out this month, September 2020. So I'm saying the point that Kambale made, a lot of these killings are being done because they want to steal our resources, but we must remember the history. They have been stealing our resources for 500 years. Okay, 400 years. For the United States, 400 years since Black people were brought to this area as enslaved. And they have not stopped. You take the people, you take the resources, you colonize the continent. When Africans snatch back their independence, you come in and you use so-called friendly tyrants and warlords, and you give them arms to kill millions of other Africans, and then you want to hide the story, so you don't want the story to be told. So other Africans and in other areas of the continent need to pay attention. This is not just an issue for the Congolese. This is what I want to stress. It is our issue for all of us, even Africans outside the continent. And here, of course, I'll talk to my fellow Africans in the United States. One concrete thing that we could do. We have missed so many opportunities, and Kuba, as you said, I've been at this forever. And it breaks my heart at how many opportunities we have lost. If we have united, if we had formed one called like Africans Rising, if we had formed it 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you know, it's exactly 30 years ago when I shook Nelson Mandela's hand in Washington, D.C. And the next year I thought, okay, South Africa is moving in the right direction. We need to do the same thing for the whole entire continent. But it starts with us coming together and speaking with one voice. So this is part of the major call for arms, that we need to unite and get our voices heard. If we were well united, the United States is voting next month. In 1 month, they are voting. What is the Africa that are being shown by both sides? Because our voices have not been strong enough, those policies will not be strong. So let me emphasize again, this is an issue for the whole continent, for all Africans on the continent and outside. And here in the United States, one of the other things we can do is we have to come together so our voice is so strong that it's not just listened to, it is feared. I want it so strong that they fear what we say and what we demand.
Yeah, and me, I'll push you a little more. There's a question there, and somebody's asking, about the coming up election in the U.S. and
yes.
What the outcome of that. Does it do anything for us, for this tribunal that we are pushing for, etc.? Somebody's trying to see the link.
Yeah, yes, I think because maybe given my long track record of this, I'm a little bit jaded. So I've realized that sometimes in elections you have two choices, neither of which is perfect. You go for the one that is better, the lesser of two evils, okay? And when you look at the record, for as long as I have lived here, even before I got to this country, I had a certain view of the two political parties, the Republicans and the Democrats. You live here and you look at all the policies that have come through from the anti-apartheid movement in the 80 years later. And to me, you see a clear pattern. To me, it is no accident that Black voters in the United States, people of African descent in the United States, they used to vote massively for Republicans when Black men first got the vote, okay? I'm not a historian, but they first got the vote in the 1860s. and they voted massively for the Republicans. Today, they vote 90% for the Democrats. Because if you look at the policies that they follow, if you look at even the makeup of the party, to me, it is clear that the Democrats have a more pro-Africa policy, at least in how who they bring into their tent and the issues that they look at. And so for me, it is quite clear they are nowhere near perfect, but I think they are the better option. And then it must not stop there. You have to push them. I was very proud, like practically every Black person I know, when Mr. Obama was in power for 8 years. But we always said we love him, but in America, you don't get good policy from a politician unless and until you push him. You have to push him hard. He himself gave speeches that made me say, oh my goodness, he is saying we need to push him. So yes, US elections are coming. I think you have to look at what they are saying about Africa, and you have to vote the right way. But whoever is elected, we have to shift gears and ramp up the pressure on them rather than say, oh, the elections is over, our work is done. No, once the election is done, our work actually should intensify.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I want to just come back to, Claude. I know you are sitting up there. Yes, there are comments and questions attacking you, but in many ways, I didn't want to put that on you. You really don't have to answer them. I think this is a place where all of us need to answer, and especially, I'd rather even have some other people speak to those questions. And some people are saying Claude is not who he say he is. That he and like you can stand here and talk about who you are, and if you want to speak to it, I'll give you the floor to do it. But as a moderator, I just feel like this is not on you to be the one speaking to some of those attacks. I mean, we are not here for that. Again, I want to bring back that we're trying to make use of this time to really make sure people understand, because there are people who are having here genuine questions. They're really wondering, like, what can we do? The African Union, will be headed by DRC. So what can a Pan-African organization do to make sure that some of these things that Kamale has been speaking about, the challenges to say, where are the questions, what about, those are the things that we really want to do. But feel free to respond to what you want, and I'd like to go back to Kambale and Judy before our time ends.
Yeah, well, we can skip the questions about who I am, because I don't think that's that important. My story has been public for over 20 years, and the only people who challenge my story are the ones who want to speak up for the perpetrators. So I'm not too worried about those who want to try to smear or paint me as something that I'm not. Now, I think it really looks, to be honest, it's foolish for anybody to come out and start denying other people's story. But in any case, for me, I think a Pan-African organization, as I said before, should take the charge in Africans taking our destiny in our own hands. Meaning, forums like this, right now we're online, but we also need to do some work offline, because there's a lot of people on the continent who do not have access to all of this technology. We've got to be in the community, sharing this information, letting the people know. And we also have to, I really believe in direct and disruptive action, where if there's a need or when there's an opportunity, or we create the opportunities, we go out and we protest. There was all this one against apartheid in South Africa, disrupt the system. We've got to also come up with ways to actually economically impact those who are who are committing the atrocities and those who are supporting those committing the atrocities. And that includes eventually organizing around boycotts. We must boycott those who are causing and contributing to the death of millions of our people. And so for me, I think eventually I get to where we do something like divest for Congo, divest for justice, boycott for justice, boycott for Congo. I think that is where we need to go as far as the Pan-Africans that we are, and take all of it from the hands of those who are actually perpetrating these crimes. And we get it done ourselves. And we have, Africa is the youngest continent in terms of age. So a lot of potential. Congo itself has great potential, not only to feed the continent, but to provide things like basics like electricity and other things that if the Congo is free, Africa is free. This is not the first time you've heard this, I'm sure, for those of you on the panel or those many of you who are following. If Congo is free, Africa will be free. We need to really put a lot of work into direct action, educating the people on the ground to make sure that a lot of the misinformation, again, denying my story is part of the misinformation, to try to discredit the messenger because the message is inconvenient. But guess what? The method is so much more important than the messenger. The message is more important also than the method. We must use every method available to make sure that this message is heard, and also that we take action, direct, that we do the boycotting. And so that will be the next phase. The next time we have these large panels, we've got to not only push for the setup of this tribunal, but push for a boycotting of those leaders, African misleaders and Western misleaders who are subjecting Africans to this, not even slow death, but really fast death. 3 million children is way too many. Let no other Congolese be killed at the hands of these same perpetrators.
Thank you. Thank you, Claude. I'll come back to you, Judy, and then to Kambale. We're moving fastly to the end of this conversation. I encourage you to read some of the questions and make sure you pick some that you don't want to miss. I know there are more and more comments that people are making. We are still on action because a lot of people are listening from very different places. And the first step is knowing, the information, knowing where do people go. Of course, please tell us about the sources. Where do people go to get not only the information, but the action that they must take, the organizations and the group that they must join? We need to hear more about those things before we end this call. Kambale and then Judy.
In terms of places to get information, I will continue to share is Friends of Congo.org, CongoJustice.org, and stay engaged. Like right now, this event is part of the launching of Congo Week. Yes. Congo Week being a global campaign that started since 2008, where people take action every third week of October in the communities to lift up the stories of the Congolese people. So hopefully, people who have joined this call will go to CongoWeek.org and sign up so that on the third week of October, they can engage more with us and make sure that we have the tribunal. The point I want to make from the question is, Daniel, if I'm not mistaken, Ni was there, Ni, Claude, Jacques Bahati, Emira, and others. We had a panel, a briefing on Capitol Hill in the United States. Many things happened in that event. The thing that marked me a lot was there was a guy who was in the room. He said his name was Tom Dahiro, a journalist. And I looked at him. The guy is built like a military, like a soldier. He's so big. And he said he's a military guy. And he asked a question in the room. He said he's a journalist. So he asked a question in the room, to disrupt the event. I can't remember what the answer was. What was the question? But what I remember is at the end of the event, this guy came violently to the podium, literally attacking Claude, and he was speaking Kinyarwanda. And all I could hear Claude say was, say it in English so everybody can hear. And I kept asking myself, what was he saying? And there were people who came and pulled him. I mean, the guy is gigantic. So he already looked like a military guy to me. I knew that he's not a journalist. So I asked Claude, what did he say? And the guy was pretty much threatening him, saying that his story is not true. And later I find that he's actually a soldier from the Rwandan Patriotic Front, right? A Rwandan soldier shows up at an event pretending to be a journalist, challenging Rwandans who are standing for justice in Rwanda and justice in Congo. Those are the dangers that whistleblowers and justice seekers face. And that goes to it that came from Sophie Newman. She's a journalist writing on the Great Lakes. And she wanted to know what is happening to Dr. Mukwege. Because Dr. Mukwege, I mean, I don't speak Kinyarwanda. I saw a video circulating of a Rwandan general named James Kabarebe speaking in Kinyarwanda and mentioning Mukwege. The moment I heard, I got worried because I know the story of Kabarebe, because Kabarebe killed civilians in Tingi, in Mbandaka, in Kitona, in Kinshasa. Many Congolese have died because of him. And he's one of the soldiers that committed many crimes there. So for him to mention Dr. Mukwege in a TV interview in a TV station in Rwanda was already an alarm for all of us. And when we heard the translation of what he was saying, literally threatening a Nobel Peace Prize, who is calling for justice. That is what journalists also should focus on, because they want to know what can journalists do to expose the lies that there are right now. For the past 2 decades, many journalists and officials cannot say they don't know what's happening in the Congo. It's the ordinary people who do not have the information. So it's the responsibility of journalists, especially those who are on this panel listening in, to say your contribution to peace and stability in Congo, your contribution to justice in the Congo, is to share a just story of the Congolese and the people of the Great Lakes, where we know that since 1996, over 6 million Congolese have died, and half of them are children under the age of 5. And the world is silent. And those who are standing up against it, sometimes are faced by their own governments, because the government right now, the government of Congo, has many people who participated in the crimes, are benefited from those crimes. The government in the neighboring countries are also the same when we look at Rwanda and Uganda. So it will require all of us. There is no small action. You should never feel like there is nothing to do. And the part where I have a slight different opinion, I think more of Dr. Martin Luther King. He wasn't a Democrat or a Republican. What he believed in, right, was the freedom and liberation and human dignity of his people. So I'm worried because in 2008, I was also caught in the Obama wave. I campaigned for him, but it surprised me. The UN report that we are speaking about was published in 2010. Who was the president? Barack Obama. Who was the Secretary of State? Hillary Clinton. What did they do with that report? They blocked it. Susan Rice was the ambassador. We mobilized, Susan Rice was the ambassador to the United Nations, the US ambassador to the United Nations. We mobilized so much to expose the controversy that the first Black president, when a report has been published saying that there is possible genocide in the Congo, his administration shelved the report. So the same thing can be true, that I look at US political party more from the perspective that their foreign policy when it comes to Africa has never been in the interest of Africa. But we have to use all the tactics available, right? Just as we did with apartheid, we had Republican president, Democratic president, and so on and so forth. that we say, no matter who is in the White House, no matter which political party is there, we cannot fall asleep because this President Barack Obama can sing at the Apollo. That we must hold him accountable. We must hold Trump accountable, and whoever wins this election, no matter if it's Trump or Biden, or of course, it's not the only ones running. So I always make the mistake saying Trump or Biden. There are others also who are running. No matter who gets into that, we must mobilize for peace. But the action, if Biden wins, that's my call. Let's make sure that Suzerain has no office whatsoever in the administration of that, because she worries me a lot of the policies that she implemented, supporting Meles Zenawi in Ethiopia, supporting Paul Kagame or Rwanda, supporting Museveni or Uganda. That would be devastating. But we as Africans, as we use tactics to get our voice heard, we must continue to mobilize also on our continent, because we also have our brothers in Kenya who are involved in gold trade in DRC. We still are worrying about the diamond that Zimbabwe took also from DRC during the war. It was called Africa's war, so many were involved. So each African must look at it and say, Congolese are calling for tribunal for Congo. If they get justice, then they can be free and allow the continent to move forward.
Thank you, Kambale. It is justice that would really free all of us. We are really getting to the end. Judy, just few words to the end before we close.
Thank you, Tumba. I just would like to say I agree with Kambale. Let us recall that it was during the Democratic administration under Bill Clinton that the United States helped regime change in the heart of Africa. In 1996, 1997, the Democrats supported Kagame's invasion, assisted him militarily and with satellite communications, protected him as his troops were killing the Congolese and Rwandan Hutu refugees. They wanted to topple Mobutu. They wanted regime change, opening up the corridor of natural resources because copper and cobalt production had decreased significantly in the late 80s, early 90s. They wanted a vast restructuring of that region. So we can't count on Democrats to act in good faith here. I also wanted to come back to Kambale's point about the Rwandan presence in international peacekeeping. You mentioned they were in Haiti, they're in Sudan, they're now in the Sahel of Africa, helping. They're very crucial for the United States in waging a war against terror in the Sahel. And so many people feel that this is masking another attempt to gather rare earth minerals in that area. So the Rwandans are very beneficial to the United States peacekeeping operations at the level of the UN. And that is the principal reason, one of the principal reasons the mapping report never, that it got shelved and we never saw the creation of a tribunal, because the Rwandan government blackmailed and said, you want to release this report, it will be released. But we are your principal people providing the third most, strongest presence at the UN, providing you peacekeepers for the war on terror. Was the blackmail that was very effective in dismantling efforts to create the tribunal. We have to talk about these things. We have to talk about the geopolitics. It's important that people like Kambale, Friends of the Congo, and Claude Gadabouke be in charge of knowledge production and expose some of these scandals, pressure the UN, and talk about, make sure politicians and people in powerful places stories, embarrass elected officials or UN officials over all the evidence that has been buried, all the politicking, all the diversion tactics. So I think, again, these are all things that have to be raised.
Thank you, Claude. Thank you, Kambale. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Ni. Thank you for all of the knowledge, the information you've shared, and thank you for everyday action and sacrifice to make sure that we live in a world of justice. I thank everyone who joined us. We had about 119 people on this platform on the Zoom. I don't know how many on the Facebook Live, but somebody, me said it earlier, we need to tell our stories. We have stories, we have also channels to tell them. It is extremely hard in these days to bury truth. When it took, what took 20 years to surface, or now will take, less than months to come up. As much as, it's buried down, as much as narratives are built, it is becoming harder and harder to hide. Kambale mentions criminals flying around the world. We need to make sure that people hear and know that there will come a day when this will not be possible. There was a time when people did crimes and got away with it. Those times are gone. As we move into the future, it's going to be more and more difficult to hide. People will have to respond. People will have to pay. And we have more and more conversation coming. Stay tuned. Congo Week, already on the 19th, we have a whole conversation on reparation. I know some people have asked some of those questions here. We didn't touch even that, about what should we do? And we're having, people who, like the author of King Leopold Ghost, Adam Bocccio, Princess Esmeralda, Michael Ekren, Patricia Servan, that will be also on a panel and will specifically talk about what we call rewriting history. Ni said it earlier, it didn't start today. What is happening to the Congo didn't start today, hundreds of years ago already. And it's the same principle, it's the same greed, it's racism that fuels what is going on to the Congo today. So we will continue having this conversation. We will dig deep into the roots of why our lives are not considered. We will go back to the roots of it, to uproot it, so that we can live in peace, in justice, and in dignity with everyone else in the world. Thank you for your support, for your work, for everything you're doing every day. And see you very, very soon. I thank our interpreters, the technology people. I know you struggled in the beginning. Thank you for helping us and making this possible. Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to Emira. We're missing her. Thank you very much. Goodbye.